Hey, it's Tay with Mom on the Spectrum. Today we're talking about a little bit heavier of a subject. It's one that's come up a lot in the comments and something that I think we're all feeling a lot. How do we come to grips with an adult autism diagnosis? I think that there's a lot of loneliness that can be associated with being on this journey, especially when you've lived for so long one way and realize there's a name for it. And I'm here today to share some of my thoughts on what that experience has been like for me. And I also wanted to share some of the things that I've become really grateful for as a result of my diagnosis. Before we get started today, if you could please hit the red subscribe button under this video, that helps me out so much and it helps my videos reach more people who are looking for it. I know if I would have had more information like this at any point in my life, it would have made a huge difference, and that's why I started this channel. So if you would give me a thumbs up and subscribe, that's the best way that you can support me on this channel and help it grow. If you're new to the channel, you might not know that I got diagnosed with autism at age 31. I have had what most people would consider a pretty successful, normal life, although it's felt very different to me. I think I'll always remember the day when I first suspected that I might be autistic. I had a colleague over at my house. She was explaining that someone she knew had been diagnosed with autism and started explaining more of what that looked like. The person who had been diagnosed is someone that I knew and went to school with, and she seemed a lot like me. And so I remember it was kind of like almost a cartoon where the sound just kind of drowned out as she was talking, and I started putting all of the pieces together for myself that, hey, everything she was mentioning about what autism presents like was something that I also experience in my life. So I'll always remember that day because for me, the experience of realizing I was autistic, it was very pinpointed. It was that moment. It was a culmination of years of therapy and reading all kinds of books and research and wondering why my brain was so different than other people's, and then one day it just clicked. In that moment, it was kind of exciting for me. I don't know if any of you are like me and you love to research. I've got my fidget toy here with me today. So this was something else that I could research, and I didn't tell anyone about it, and I got into my little black hole of research, and I read everything that the internet had to say about autism, especially in adults. I was pretty surprised at the lack of resources for adults and also female adults. That's another reason why I started the channel. And the more I read, the more it started sinking in that I was autistic. I didn't feel like I needed a professional diagnosis to know, because in my soul, everything that I read just further confirmed it. And I knew that it explained so much about how I saw the world, how I experienced the world, so many of the challenges that I faced that I didn't have words for. It all just kind of started making sense. For a while, the feeling was more kind of wonderment, kind of curiosity, and like, wow, how did I miss this? And then I would say, you know, kind of after the newness of the idea that I was autistic started wearing off, then there was a sort of grief that kind of started to set in. I don't think that fully hit me until I received my professional diagnosis, which was about 6 to 8 months after I started doing my own research. And when I got that professional diagnosis, I didn't need it to confirm that I was autistic, but seeing it on paper, it did something to me. It was a validation of my experiences. It was a validation of my struggles and of the time that I had spent in therapy saying, yeah, but I'm different. Yeah, what you're saying makes sense, but also there's something else. There's something behind the thing, you know? It's like I kept trying to point to what it was and nobody could help me name what I was pointing to. And when I had a name for it on paper, there was a grief that kind of set in. I felt sad for my younger self. I was sick a lot in school. I remember getting sick in the hallway in first grade. I remember having strep throat all the time. I had to see a heart specialist and I wore a heart monitor in school because of the stress that I experienced that I didn't have a name for and didn't know how to talk about. I developed an autoimmune disease in second grade called alopecia and started losing my hair. And all of these things I truly feel like were a result of stress that I wasn't able to talk about and didn't have words for. I felt really sad for that part of me that had lived for so long without having adequate help. And I wouldn't blame anyone for that. I just wish that there had been more resources and more knowledge available to help us pinpoint why I had the struggles that I had. I think it was kind of easy to write them off as I just was kind of a sick kid and I had a lot of stress because I was really smart and I had a lot of hard classes. But looking back, I would remember things like in second grade, how I would sleep behind one of my teacher's desks because sometimes I was so stressed that I couldn't sit through class. So I just remembered a lot of traumatic experiences where I was so stressed and so anxious and felt really alone and didn't have the right words to express myself or ask for help. I just remember thinking that everybody had these experiences and everybody must be dealing with them better than I was, and I didn't want to complain. I was a rule follower, and so I felt really sad for that little girl. I was frustrated thinking about high school when I took all the advanced classes and wore myself out saying yes to everything because that's what we did. If you were smart, you took the hard classes and you were a part of every group. I was in National Honor Society, I was in marching band, I was in leadership positions, I was on a dance team, I led a group after school, I was active in my church. And so all of these things that I said yes to because I felt like I was supposed to, and that was my safety net, was following the rules, following the routine, and it wore me out. Looking back when I was younger and even until recently, I feel like I'm only just now kind of learning how to relax and how to rest, and that's actually crucial. It's crucial for everyone, but I think people on the spectrum need even more rest than many others because of how involved our sensory processing system is and the amount of information that we take in general. I've really grieved a lot. I find myself thinking a lot about college. I received a scholarship to go to TCU, go Frogs, and I'm really grateful for that. It was a flute scholarship, but looking back on those college experiences, I didn't know enough about myself to have the experience that I wish that I had in hindsight. I got to learn from world-renowned teachers. My focus in college was just to kind of put my head down, follow the rules, get everything done, check off all the boxes, and then be done, because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. I didn't really know how to think for myself or what I wanted to do because, again, my safety net was rules and routines. I didn't know how to look outside of the box in that capacity. I didn't know how to look past that. I think that a lot of my experience was like a checklist. And now I realize that I genuinely love learning. I love learning about everything. And there's so many experiences and classes that I wish that I could do over again. So many teachers that I wish I could go back to and ask questions and be more comfortable knowing that my social interaction might be a little different than others, but being able to express myself. And I don't know, I feel like I didn't have a grid for who I was, and so I tried not to be seen. There was one class that I needed. It was a specialized class that I needed to graduate, and I walked in the first day and there were 5 people, which is like the definition of a small group and one of the hardest social settings for autistic people. I almost didn't hear a word that the professor said that class, and I left and I dropped the class. I just couldn't handle that stress, even though it was an amazing class and one that I really needed, even though it put a huge kink in my schedule and I had to go a very roundabout way to fill that credit. I did stuff like that all the time and then would stress out about it because I had no idea why I did it or why I needed to do it, why I couldn't just be normal and take the class. I wish that I would have sat in on office hours, explored topics without having to have the right answers or follow the routines or the rules. Band was a huge part of my experience, and I just remember everybody seeming really connected. Like, we spent so much time together, and I had a couple of really close friends that one of them I actually had since middle school, and if you're watching, you know who you are, and I love you. I didn't have that same sense of connection that I felt like everybody else had to the group, and it actually made me feel kind of alone even when I would play in the band. And I had a lot of solos, and I just remember feeling, in a team or in an orchestra or any type of group, it's really important to feel connected to the people that you work with and to feel supported by them, and I just wasn't able to access that feeling of support, and so I felt alone and I felt isolated. And so I feel like my college experience is maybe the thing that I grieve the most as a result of my diagnosis, because I just feel like I would do it so much differently if I got to go back and do that over again. And I hesitate to say those things because I feel like I always try to see the positives in things, and there were plenty of positives in my college experience and a lot of things that I wouldn't change if I went back. I do find myself thinking about that period of time the most in relation to having an autism diagnosis now. Oh, this is a hard topic to talk about. I do know that a lot of you watching have gone through this experience and are going through this experience, and I've heard it so many times in the comments, and I think it's really important that we share these experiences together. That's probably, I think, the best thing that has come out of my diagnosis is being able to connect to other people. Somebody that I used to work with would say, if you can't talk about it, it owns you. And I feel like that's a really good rule to live by. If there's something that you can't talk about out loud, there's a good chance that it has a lot of power over your life in a way that is taking away from your ability to do what you want to do and live how you want to live. This doesn't mean, you don't have to make a YouTube channel and share your experiences publicly. If there's somebody you can open up to, if there's one person, or if you can journal, or if you can start therapy, if you can start talking about some of the things that make you feel isolated and alone and frustrated and angry, it really does give you a lot of power over them, and it makes them feel less scary and less intense. I had kind of a similar journey with my autoimmune issues with alopecia. I lost a lot of my hair just a few years ago, and I thought I was going to lose all of it, and clearly I have it today. I'm so grateful for that. But I remember sharing my experiences publicly with that as well, and I was connected with people around the world who were going through the same thing. Some people who hadn't even left their houses because they were so ashamed or embarrassed, and the feeling of getting to connect to somebody who's gone through something so similar, I just get kind of emotional thinking about it because it's very powerful. I had another experience. I had a very unique bone removed from my foot, and through that experience met someone in Canada who ended up sending me a care package with like Disney princess coloring pages that she had made for me. We were both adults, a scarf, a really sweet letter. I've just really found that whenever we talk about the things that are scary and hard and upsetting with the right people that you trust, and people that support you, and people that will truly listen, that's really when we start being able to take control of our lives and being able to use those challenges and those struggles for good. If you do feel kind of stuck in the grief process of accepting your diagnosis, is there somebody that you can share it with, that you can be real with and honest and vulnerable? Because it might take a weight off your chest. You might connect in a way that you hadn't before, that brings a little bit more light and a little bit more joy to your experience. I also feel like my diagnosis has really shown me how unique we all are, and all of the research that I've done about brains and autism and psychology and ADHD, all of the above, I'm coming to realize that each of our brains is just as unique as a fingerprint, and we all see the world differently and uniquely, and we all have things that we can learn from each other. Autism is a spectrum, which has made me think, well, how do you define neurotypical? Neurotypical, where's the line for neurotypical? And that's got to be some type of spectrum as well. We're all of us, somewhere in the middle. And I think the sooner we can start trying to understand each other through that lens, not putting each other in a camp of this or that, but just human being with unique experiences and ideas, I really think that that's how we move past all of this strife everywhere. The last year and a half especially has been so upsetting because we're all so divided. And I think through this experience of me accepting my diagnosis and accepting that I'm different and unique, it has allowed me to see that everybody really is unique and different and has their own perspectives, and it's given me more grace for people who are really different than me. It's helped me ask more questions instead of assuming that I know things about other people, and I'm really grateful for that outlook and that perspective. I feel like it gives me more inner peace. It helps me just feel more at home within my body. This is who I am, and every day I can accept that a little bit more, and it gives me grace and patience for other people as they are. And the other thing is that I'm just really proud of myself, and I'm proud of so many of you in the comments who have gone through similar things. I'm just proud of us because it's really hard, and there haven't been enough resources. There hasn't been enough support to see us through so much of this. We made it through. We're here and we're doing the best that we can, taking it one day at a time, and I think that's definitely something to celebrate. I think that we're fighters. I think that we're super smart and capable, and I think that we're good at solving problems creatively because we have to survive. So I'm really proud of me. I'm really proud of you for playing the hand that you've been dealt. And we might not have always had a good attitude or perspective about it, but we're here and we're learning more about ourselves. We're learning more about self-compassion and grace, which is going to make the world a better place, because we'll be able to, in turn, share that with other people. Now I'm able to give myself permission to rest more often, which is great and actually is really healing in so many ways. I'm able to give myself permission to be different in social settings. I might take a time out in another room, or I might say no to a certain social event, or I might cancel the day of. It's just all of these little things that I've given myself room to change, and it's been really, really nice. I also feel like it helps me be a little bit braver in conversations. Obviously, I'm very public about my diagnosis because I feel like it has given me a lot of power over it and helped me really use it for good and to change the world for the better. But now that people know that I'm autistic, I just feel so much more free to be myself. Like sometimes I'm really goofy and sometimes I'm really serious. Sometimes I'm gonna be looking around the room when I talk to you and sometimes I'm gonna have my fidget toys. I don't know, I just feel more comfortable being whoever I am that day, whatever that looks like, minute to minute. I was thinking about this the other day. I don't necessarily feel brave for having a YouTube channel and sharing that I'm autistic because I'm not ashamed of it. If you're watching and you're on the spectrum, I hope that you can find a way to not be ashamed of your diagnosis either. There's a stigma around it, but there doesn't need to be. Autism is a made-up word. Like humans made that word up. I don't know if that's gonna click with you all like it does with me. Like it's just a word. Our brain is our brain. We can't change it. The word autism just helps us kind of understand how our brain sees the world and what we can do to make that process a little bit less daunting, a little bit more comfortable. And I don't see autism as anything to be ashamed of. It's a difference for sure, and in some ways life is harder and more challenging, but we all have challenges, we all have struggles, and I feel really grateful for my diagnosis. I feel grateful that I've been able to interact with the right people to get me the support and resources that I have today. I feel grateful that I can make these videos and connect to so many of you who are going through the same thing. My hope for all of you watching is that we can together start to see autism not as anything to be pitied for or embarrassed about or ashamed of, but something that really can empower us. I think in a lot of ways it's almost like a superpower. You know, there's definitely some downsides to it. It's hard to, have webs that shoot out of my hands every time I walk around and start climbing the walls. Like that's annoying. But in another sense, it's like, hey, I can use my webs to beat the traffic. I think there's just a lot of things with autism that allow me to see the world in a unique way. That's something we can talk about in another video. I try to focus on those, on the tough days, and give myself grace on the hard days. It's been a roller coaster journey, and it's only been 1.5 years since I've started the acceptance process. So I'm sure there's many more emotions and experiences to come. I'd love to hear your own experiences in the comments. It's been, like I said, one of my favorite things to get to connect with so many of you here. It just really reminds me that there's a reason and there's a purpose behind all of this. There's a reason that you have the differences that you do. The world needs you just as you are. You don't ever have to be a perfect version of yourself. Just be yourself. There's gonna be people that you're too much for. There's gonna be people who don't understand you, and those aren't your people. So keep advocating for yourself. Keep being honest about your experiences and the emotions that it brings up, because they're all valid. If you have a professional diagnosis or a self-diagnosis, whatever it is, they're valid. To all the beautiful autistic people watching this video, you are an irreplaceable light that the world needs. So I wish you joy, I wish you peace, I wish you acceptance, a deep and joyful acceptance that you are unique and irreplaceable. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for the video suggestions. I keep adding more to the list every week. Thanks for making this community special. If you could like this video, that would help me out. Make sure you subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye.